In Monet database, it is possible to add an interval to a date. For example, if we use this code here, we can add 10 days as interval to our date. So when I click on enter, I would get a result that is showing us the date that is after 10 days. It is also possible to subtract intervals. For example, in this example, we are now using not a date but a time. So we are having time, and from that time we will subtract this many minutes and seconds. So when I click on enter, we would get time that was just before 1 minute. Then we can also subtract two dates. For example, if we write it like this, in this case we are subtracting these two dates, the result would be just 1 day, and that 1 day will be expressed in seconds. So this is number of seconds in 1 day. And we can also subtract times. Just as dates, we can subtract times. So if we use a code like this, the result would be just 5 seconds. I will now clean my screen. If we want to see what is current date and current time, then we have several possibilities. I will copy some code inside of our terminal. So we can use all of these different variables. So when I click on enter, this is our result. So we can get the result as a date, as a time with maximal precision and time zone. We can also have both of them at once. So this timestamp plus time zone. Then we can see that these two values are the same. That means that current timestamp and now are the same thing. And we can also show values without time zone. So we can have just a time without time zone. And we can also use local timestamp. In that case, we have timestamp without time zone. I will now clean my screen. Let's say that we have some string that represents date or time, but we want to express it as a real date or time. In that case, we have several approaches. And first is that we can just use cast operator, something like this. In this case, if we write date before our date string, then we would get a real date. We can do the same with time, timestamp, time with time zone, and timestamp with time zone. We would get always our correct result. But there are several ways how to do it. So we can also use a cast function, and we are using the same example, but just this time we are using cast function. So cast from this as a time will give us correct represented time. So if I click on enter, I would get the same result. And there is also convert function. So I will copy this code here. And in this case, it is almost the same. We're just using convert function to convert this string here to a time. So when I click on enter, I would get the same result. Now, this will all work if our strings are ISO compatible. So if we have year, then month, then day, and so on. So if everything is up to rules, but if we don't have such strings, in that case, we have to use special functions. So I will now paste this code here. So we have a function that will give us a result as a date, or as a time, or as a timestamp, no matter how our string is defined, because we can write a formatting expression with some specifiers that will explain to Monet what this string represents. For example, this means that this is day, this is month, this is year. Then we have hours and minutes. We also have this Z for time zone, and this will help us to resolve any string. So if we execute this code, we would get a correct result. Now, what all of these specifiers are? Well, if we go here to this web page, here at the bottom of this page, we can see all different specifiers that we can use. So we have those specifiers for, I don't know, the full month name according to current local and so on. So we can create our result easily with all of these specifiers. I will now clean my screen. Now, if we have a reverse problem, we have some dates and times, and we want to express them as strings, but we want to use a specific formatting for those strings. In that case, we have a special function that we can use to achieve such result, and they are just reverse functions from the previously explained functions. Now this time we are transforming dates and times and timestamps to string. Again, like previously, we use these specifiers to explain what kind of string we want to get. So if we run this code, we would get a correct result. I will now clean my screen. For many calculations, we don't need the whole date or the whole time. Sometimes we just need a year or a month or hours or something like that. And for that, we can use extract function. So if we want to extract what is current year, we can use code like this. So we want to extract year from current date. So when I click on enter, we will see that current year is 2024. Now what values can we extract? Well, we can extract any of these values here. So we can extract year, quarter, month, week, day, hour, minute, second, day of year, day of week, century, or decade. We can also extract values from time. For example, if we want to get minutes from current timestamp, we can use this code, and currently we are in the minute 40. And we can also extract, for example, day of week, and if we do that like this, we would see that the current day of week is Saturday. I will now clean my screen. While extract function is a universal solution for extracting parts of dates and times, we also have specialized functions. Now, because extract function can work with 12 time and date references, so then we have 12 specialized functions, and I will now show you one example with those functions. I will paste that here, and we can see that some of these functions are enclosed in double quotes, and this is because these are protected words, so they have to be enclosed in double quotes. I will now run this code, and we would get all of the elements of our date or time. I want to say here that week number is calculated using ISO standard. That means that week 1 is the first week in year where at least 4 days of that week belong to that year. Similar to these 12 functions, we also have 2 more functions that can extract dates and seconds, but only from second interval. So if I paste this code, we will see that we are using second interval in this first case and in second case, and we can extract either day or number of seconds. So if I run this code, I will get 1 day and 24 seconds. I will now clean my screen. If we want to make a comparison of dates and times, then we can use functions greatest and least. For comparing of 2 dates, we can use this statement, which will tell us that this date 25th is after this date 22nd. We can also use function list, and this time we will use it with times. So we will find from these 3 times which is the smallest, but this will not work because functions greatest and least, they only work on 2 arguments, so we have to provide only 2 times. Now it will work. Now we will see which time is lesser than the other one. And we can also use these functions on timestamps, so we can compare these 2 timestamps, and we would get a correct result. I will now clean my screen. If we want to calculate difference between 2 timestamps, in that case we have specialized functions for the task. And as before, these specialized functions are different based on that what time unit they are using, whether they are using seconds, minutes, hours, and so on. So I will now run this code. We will get our result. Now first we will notice that this first function, timestamp diff, it will return number of seconds, but it will be expressed as a seconds interval. And if we specifically use this function with seconds at the end, then we would get just a number of seconds. We also have our minutes, hours, and so on. We can notice that this last number is negative, That is because when we're using these functions, the first argument, the first timestamp should be bigger than the second one. In this last example, that is not the case. We have first smaller timestamp, then the bigger one, because this is the year 2021 and this is the year 2024. So then the difference will be negative number. I will now clean my screen. When we do some arithmetic calculations, we know that we can round a number, but is it possible to round a month? Well, for that we have a special function. That function's name is date trunc. So if I run this code here, I would actually round everything in this timestamp to the level of month. So this is as it was before. This is untouched, but all of this is rounded, except the days. Now days cannot be 0, so we have 1 here instead of 22. Now what time references can we use with these functions? Well, we can use all of these time references, and our example is showing this 4 timestamp, but we can also use this function on dates. So if we have a date, this function will work, but it will not work on time by itself. So we have just the time. In that case, this function will not work. So I will now clean my screen. In Unix systems, time is measured as number of seconds from 1st January 1970. Now, if we want to transform that number of seconds to regular timestamp or to do reverse, we have 2 functions for that. And here we can see those 2 functions. So I will first transform this number of seconds to timestamp, or we can use this function here, epoch ms, to transform this timestamp to number of seconds. So if we run this, we will get our either timestamp or either number of seconds.